Welcome back to MetFlex and Chill. This is Rachel Geiger, your host, and I'm here with Travis Zipper. What's up, Travis? How are you?
Good. How are you doing on this fine day?
I'm doing great. I'm excited you're here. Before we dive into some of the topics that I want to chat about today, do you want to give our listeners or viewers just a quick background on you, who you are? Just give us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, try to give it as quick as possible, or why should anyone listen to me or take any of my advice without a grain of salt? I've been in a clinical setting for about 6 or 7 years, working in age management clinics, working with, really sick people from obese to hormone replacement to autoimmune conditions. And I would say that's where I started. And I was very frustrated that I would have these people doing everything right, or they were following all my directions as like a diet coach for these clinics, and they weren't seeing results. So I started diving into more and more, started figuring out as to why was the medical system failing them so, terribly, so to speak. And I started learning about root cause issues and really trying to dig down and how the foundation needs to be built first. I've been there. I've done it all. I've been on the bodybuilding stage. I've been a CrossFit competitive athlete in regionals. I understand what it takes to beat your body down and not recover properly and the repercussions from doing so. And I've made a lot of money in situations where I had no purpose in my life, where I didn't actually enjoy what I was doing, or I was only chasing a dollar. And it all comes back to, helping people in the right way and having that feeling going to bed that you're doing something right. So quick little 30-second blurb on myself.
Love it. Love it. That's awesome. Okay, so some of the topics that I wanted to dive into today are kind of surrounding hormones and body composition, maybe some chat about menopause and fat loss. I know that's an area that you've tackled before, just because I've followed your work, listened to you on other podcasts, and really that's why I wanted to bring you on, because you're very, very knowledgeable in these areas, and then potentially get into some gut health stuff. So just starting off with kind of hormones in general, not in general, but when it comes to like body composition changes and whether it's fat loss goals or muscle building goals, we know that, hormones and optimizing hormones is important for that. But I feel like there's still kind of this debate out there between some people in terms of, or not even, I guess, debate, or just misconceptions and misunderstandings around, this concept of, calories are the only thing that matter versus hormones are the only thing that matter. And I feel like we kind of know that it's obviously not one way or the other. There's kind of an in between, and really depends on, specifics with that person. But can you kind of just debunk this, like, calories in versus calories out versus hormones, and how that relates to kind of optimizing your body composition?
Sure. I think the calories in, calories out idea, it has some foundations to it, but there's always, you have to take the bio-individuality of the person. And the calories in, calories out is that, yes, if someone wants to lose fat, if they want to lose weight, they obviously have to be in a caloric deficit. They have to be eating less than they're burning. You can't argue with that fact. But what people don't realize is that the body has also evolved through millions of years, or however long we've been on this planet, to survive. And when food is reduced and body weight, in terms of body fat pounds, is dropped, there are like internal sensors in the body that say, something's wrong. Okay, we're going to now try to slow things down so we can replace that weight, or that weight that was lost, because we've now deviated from that homeostatic set point. I always like to use the analogy of a thermostat in the house, is that the thermostat's always set to 75, and it gets too hot, it's going to turn on the air. Okay, that's attempting to get back to that homeostatic set point. Or if it gets too cold, it's going to turn on the heat. So the body has means of counteracting the effects of losing any more weight. And how does it do that? Well, one, it increases hunger. Okay, so it makes you more hungry. This is when we stop eating a lot of food. People are like, what's the first thing? Man, I want to eat everything. I'm starving. And the second thing is that it reduces your basal metabolic rate. So 70% of your calories, of your calorie burn, is done through things that you can't control, like heart rate, digestion, nervous system function. And it's going to reduce that percentage down to try to overcompensate. So people, what do? They eat less and they exercise more. And they're kind of just digging themselves into a hole. And you have to understand how that works and how that's the fundamental problem with the calories in, calories out dilemma. Once you get to a certain point, if you're not offsetting it or doing other things, you're just going to get caught into that vicious cycle of, the body saying, okay, we're going to slow things down even more. You're going to eat less. And then you become what's called metabolically adapted, where you're now stuck at eating 1,000 calories. And that's what your body's running on, even though that's not enough nutrients that you need to fuel the body. If that makes kind of sense. And how is that connected to hormones? Well, hormones are also downregulated when there's a stressor. So when you're eating less and the body senses, uh-oh, something's wrong, what's the first thing that's going to happen is, well, the body's like, well, we're not really thinking about having sex or reproducing because we're thinking about surviving. And what does that do? So that shuts down all the sex hormone production, shuts down growth hormone, and it increases things like ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, and decreases things like leptin, which is the satiety hormones. This is how things turn into this hormonal tornado, so to speak, that people blame the problem on, but what's the true cause of what's going on? That's what you got to ask.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That makes sense. So in terms of like metabolic adaptation, and if someone listening to this is like, oh, I have that, or I have been, chronically dieting for a long period of time, and, now I'm kind of maintaining my weight at this probably less than optimal calorie intake, what would you recommend in terms of tips to kind of get out of that?
Short term is, it's basically you have to think of what is the stress on the body that's causing someone to be, or causing the body to think that, well, why are we not burning any fat? Why are we not at that homeostatic set point? What's the first thing you can do is, well, you can eat more. You can eat more calories, okay? Which scares a lot of people. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm eating less. Now you're telling me I need to eat more to lose weight? And it's a very foreign concept. And it's been, ingrained into our brains for the past 20 years through media and doctors and whoever that just eat less and exercise more. That's the first thing you do. Second thing is you can actually move more, not actually exercise more, but you increase something called your energy flux. So think of eating more food and actually moving more creates more of an energy burning state. Compare an athlete, okay, who's exercising or moving all day, eating tons amount of food, okay, which are some of the leanest people in the world, and then compare the person who is eating 1,000 calories and sitting on their butt and having a desk job all day, and look at that frame of that person. They're usually two different ends of the spectrum, and one is very high in disease and one is, pinnacles of health, so to speak. So you want to move closer towards that state of moving more, okay, which is increasing, activities, chores, steps, not sitting on your butt all day behind a computer screen, and eating more good quality foods, primarily in the things that take more energy to break down, like the fiber and the protein, so to speak. But you can only do that within reason. But just think more calories from good foods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then in terms of, how hormones play a role in this, and if you are, if your hormones have downregulated to a certain point, is there a way to test for that, or to, once you have tested for that, optimize that?
It really depends on what you're looking for. Like if someone's having, let's just say it's a female per se that's maybe lost her cycle because she's not eating enough food, going and getting testing to confirm that it's gone or something's really low, that's pretty much going to tell you what you already know. Now, if it's questionable, there are tests like hormone urinary tests, like Dutch tests, which is called dried urinary testing for complete hormones. It looks at cortisol markers, so you can kind of corroborate that with sex hormones. That actually will show if a female has ovulated if she takes the test on the right day. So that can be an important piece of information. Shows some organic acids, which are like nutrient markers, like primarily B vitamins, so you can see how the liver's working, or if the liver has some of the nutrients that it needs properly. But when you look at blood testing, the serum blood levels of females, they fluctuate so much throughout the month. So if you go get it, what are you comparing it to? Are you comparing it to the exact same time, the exact same date, the month before or the year before? Or did she get it right when she woke up? Was she fasted? There's too many variables that blood levels for testing hormones really don't show you that much when you're looking at estrogen and progesterone. Now, testosterone and thyroid, that's different. Okay, those are pretty consistent with females, where they don't fluctuate that much, where you kind of know where you want to be, and you're really aiming to be in like the top third of the quarter of the reference range for like optimal levels of health. But if you're looking to say, listen, man, there's something wrong, I want some clues, or I want some evidence. Like people like to see tests. They like to see if something's wrong. Yeah, Dutch testing is probably one of the best. If serum testing with your doctor, if it's free and insurance, start with that. That's a very good thing. And there's actually something called a cycle mapping test, where you actually spit into a tube every 2 days through a 34-day cycle, and it plots it for you. So you can see where your peaks and your trough are in terms of your hormones. And I always have clients have a symptom journal, so to speak, like each day. Like, how do they feel that day? Oh man, a terrible headache, or super moody, or hangry, and correlate that with the drops and the peaks on that cycle mapping test. And sometimes it gives you a lot of clues in terms of therapy options, and as I call them, healing opportunities, point in your right direction, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And would you say, beyond the testing, or even before the testing, kind of focusing on some other areas that you can do, I guess, for free, in terms of like biofeedback metrics? Do you track any of those with, your clients before, saying, hey, I think we've exhausted all these measures, now we need to get some testing done? So is there any like biofeedback metrics in terms of that you regularly follow?
Yeah, I honestly, even though you asked about the tests, I
Yeah.
very rarely use them,
Okay.
because honestly, if you do them in the beginning, and I work with people in terms of optimizing body systems. So optimize sleep, optimize the gut, optimize liver, put stress management plans in place, and then maybe use blood chemistry to look at nutrient deficiencies, so to speak, things that the body is lacking versus looking for, disease that most doctors are. So that's where I start. At the very end, if someone's like, man, I just want to see what's going on with my hormones, or if I have someone that's perimenopausal, that's like really having crazy fluctuations, where that data is a little bit more important, then I might advise that. But I'm bigger on looking at the gut, doing gut tests and stool tests and things like that, because your microbiome will control many more aspects of hormones than a 30-minute window of your blood wills per se. But if you're looking at things optimally, if you're looking at biometrics, sleep quality is a big one that you can look at. I kind of do tend to take it with a grain of salt, even with Oura rings and like Whoop bands, but it's a good thing for a lot of people to see. And I take it with a grain of salt, because mine tells me I sleep terrible every night, even though I feel fine when I wake up in the morning. So maybe I'm personally biased. But HRV is a big one. Okay, knowing how stressed you are, and then also other biometrics. I would say that's kind of it that was actually accessible in terms of looking at feedback from their own body versus just taking an assessment and using things like symptom journals, or writing down how you felt throughout the day. Could be powerful, just reflection as well.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And I think, what you said, like first optimizing these things before even thinking about, getting testing done, because in reality, even if you did get that testing done, right, you'd still probably be going through a lot of the steps that you would anyway with all of
Correct.
these optimizations. Like if your hormones are, not functioning, how you want them to or whatever, and that shows up in a Dutch test or whatever it may be, you're still going to address sleep, stress, how much you're eating. Like you're going to be doing that stuff anyway. So it's like, I love what you said. Like, it's good to obviously start, like if you have to get the testing done after a period of time where nothing's quote unquote working, or you just want more insight, then absolutely do it. But if you're just kind of getting started, like there's so many other areas to focus on first. So I love that you
100%.
mentioned that. And then kind of last thing in terms of the calorie aspect, this is something I wanted to mention too, or ask you about too. So if there is someone who like comes to you and they're like, I've been eating this amount of calories and I'm not losing weight. One thing that I've personally seen too is like there's kind of two sides of that. It's someone who's coming to me and kind of thinking they're eating this amount of calories, but they're not actually aware or tracking, versus someone who is actually have been eating this amount of calories, and they actually have experience metabolic adaptation. How would you kind of address that for the other side, for someone who is, who might think they're eating this amount of calories, but they're actually eating way over that. And that's probably the reason why they're not seeing the weight drop.
Yeah. So, I mean, it boils down to, you have to just track food in that situation where you need someone to say, you need to call a spade and say, listen, no, you're not actually eating 1,000 calories. You might think you are, but you're actually eating, 2,000, 2,500, which is probably closer or above your maintenance level while you're slowly gaining weight. And, listen, as we get older, things slow down. The more weight we pack on, the more inflamed we are, the more hormonal problems we have. We're exposed to more stressors in the everyday, day-to-day milieu than we ever have been. So it's not the same as what our parents experienced or even our grandparents. So getting someone to track something through, maybe it's just a basic food journal, like writing it down. Okay. Maybe if someone's not technologically savvy, but it's amazing how easy it is to use something like my Fitness Pal or Chronometer to really just see what you're eating. And even if it's not right, you can kind of run through it. Like, I've had many examples where people would put like things like peanut butter down, like how much peanut butter? Oh, a spoonful. And then when you actually have them track it, it's like half a cup. And then, they go through, they eat a half a container of peanut butter, putting it on an apple, you know what I mean? And they think they're doing great, and that just a full thing of peanut butter is 3,000 calories. Mm-hmm. So that kind of can easily put someone over. Like, it's paleo though, or something along those lines.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that would be the best. And in the bare minimum, you have to understand, like, if you're eating your kids' fries, finishing them off, or you're, picking something off your kid's plate, or you're snacking throughout the day, those things all add up. Mm-hmm. And if you are, let's just say, possibly, adapted, so to speak, in terms of your calorie output, those things will put you over the edge as to why you're gaining more weight than you feel like you should.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is just like what you're trying to say, just like starting with awareness first and being accurate. Like, if you are tracking or you think you're tracking, like, okay, let's get dialed in with that and make sure we have an accurate picture before we jump to conclusions of, metabolic adaptation or hormonal adaptation, especially if the goal is, body composition changes.
Yep. There's a lot of things that people don't understand. And this is sometimes why there's people, or there's professionals, or there's people that know just a little bit more that can show you and guide you or hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. Sometimes coaching is not all about educating and showing, all the things you don't know. Sometimes it's just holding your hand and saying, here's a plan to follow, and saying, well, no, that's not really, let's take a step back and take in the whole big picture and kind of go from there. And I think some people, will really benefit from that aspect if they're just stuck, because I'm a practitioner or a coach or whatever you want to call myself. There's so many times where people, they forget what it feels like to actually have energy, to feel good, and they forget what it's like to actually, chase a goal, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I coach people one-on-one as well. And I'm a huge believer in even, just if you have some specific goal that you're, working towards, just investing in yourself and making that investment to kind of make it easier for yourself. And, if you've been spinning your wheels for a while, and then also, like you said, just the accountability and the awareness side of things, and things that, you might think you're seeing versus things that are actually happening, and having that outside perspective. So yeah, 100%. I'm a huge believer in coaches. I've had my own coach for a long time. And that accountability aspect, and just knowing like you have to check in with someone every single week. That's always in the back of your head when you're kind of making your decisions.
Right.
So it's very powerful for sure. Awesome. Okay. So can we dive into a little bit of the topic of, menopause and body composition, or fat loss specifically, and kind of chat about your experience with this? Cause I know it's something that, I have a lot of females who listen to this show, and it can be something that's frustrating, right? As you're going into perimenopause or menopause, and maybe, you're trying to gain weight, or, things are just not moving in the direction that you hope they would. Are there any kind of common struggles that you see with this, and things that could potentially, combat those struggles, or quote unquote, fix those struggles?
Yeah. So this is kind of This is a difficult kind of concept to get across to a lot of, let's just say, perimenopausal or menopausal females, is that many times females will think, okay, I still have the same body that I had when I was 25 or 30 years old, when I'm 45 or 50, and I'll just still be able to do the same things that I did when I was 25 or 30, and that should work. Or if it doesn't work, then I'll just do it even more. And this puts people into the same situation that we were in previously about being adapted, but now we have less of a reserve of hormones, lesser reserve of being resilient. And there's factors at play that are contributing to it. And I always one of my favorite phrases is you have to understand function before you can help someone with dysfunction. So you have to understand what's going on in the body before you can really fix it, or you can get someone on board with it, understanding that, oh, wow, that makes sense. I'm glad you broke it down that way. So I know that I now have to change my way of doing things. And two of the biggest problems that are seen in the perimenopausal female or the menopausal female, that, of course, perimenopause is happening earlier and earlier with females than it was, let's just say 20 years ago, is there's extreme levels of stress, okay, which the body becomes less resilient to handling. Okay, think all the stress hormones that are around. What does it do? It's going to shut down hormone production in general. Now, if we already have less hormones, or they're already fluctuating and bouncing all over the place, it's only going to make that situation worse. And then the second factor is imbalanced estrogen. And sometimes you might hear that and say, wow, I think, I get older, you have less estrogen. No, the actual amount of estrogen is pretty much the same up until like maybe the last year or two before actually menopause, but it tends to fluctuate wildly. And there's less progesterone, okay, which they call the great balancer. So there's less of something to actually balance estrogen. So it creates more symptoms, okay, more, this is you get the 38-year-old female that's having hot flashes already. Mm-hmm. And this is why. So add stress, add imbalanced estrogen, add lower progesterone, and add cravings and insulin resistance that comes with a little bit more belly fat. We turn into a new type of female. And this type of female, exercising more, doing more boot camp classes, eating less, eating chicken and broccoli, that's the worst way to do it. The body actually needs more nutrients. So it needs a little bit of a rewiring with regards to, okay, now instead of exercising more or eating less, I need to focus on more vegetables. I need to focus on foods that actually help process estrogen better in my body. I need to focus on more stress management and self-care and things that are actually parasympathetic in nature, which is, turning on the detoxification, the de-stressing phases, so to speak. So it's kind of like a new mentality, and it's hard for some females to grasp, like, well, I just can't exercise more or just go run more miles, but that's the change. And, you look at societies like Okinawa, up until 25 years ago, there was no word for menopause. Like, it was just this phase of, well, all of a sudden, I guess I don't have my cycle anymore. There was no hormonal issues. And now Western society is infiltrated over there, and it's now a word because of food and stress. But if you can manage all those factors that we talked about, and eat good foods and sleep and get sunshine and balance estrogen, hormonal problems don't exist. It's that's just hard to do for the most people in the world today.
Yeah, for sure. And then you mentioned insulin resistance. So I do want to dive into that a little bit, because I know we were chatting off air a little bit about kind of, what this podcast is titled MetFlex and Chill, which obviously stands for metabolic flexibility. What's your kind of experience with metabolic flexibility, especially when it comes to menopause and that sort of thing?
Okay, so their estrogen and insulin are directly connected through what's called the estrogen receptor A. Okay, it's just basically just thinks you need estrogen to make your receptors on your cell sensitive to insulin, so it takes it into the cell and not become insulin resistant. And they've done studies with mice where they knock out this estrogen receptor A, and these mice, they become obese in like short weeks or a short period of time, like several weeks. So they know that estrogen is really important for that. So when we start having fluctuating levels of estrogen as we get older, or it starts to drop, obviously insulin resistance is going to go up. The sensitivity to it is going to be less and less. And now add in the the factor of eating all day, okay, and someone always running on glucose, so to speak, or their last meal, their body never has this switch to say, uh-oh, we don't have any food, let's tap into that body fat. So that's metabolic, inflexibility. It's the inflexibility from the body to transition from running on glucose from a meal because they're eating when they wake up, and they're eating every 2 or 3 hours because they get hangry and their blood sugar drops, and they create this vicious cycle. So they're making it even worse by, you have to kind of listen to the body and know what's happening and work with it versus work against it. And, the stereotypical, eat every 3 hours or eat every 2 hours to control your blood sugar, and eat when you wake up and then have a little snack before you go to bed. That's probably one of the biggest problems for that demographic who engages in that, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then would you say, like, when you are, if you're working with a client who is experiencing this, is there a specific way that you would go about helping them to become more metabolically flexible?
Yeah, and some of the best ways to do it is it's free. You know what I mean? It's just eating less, okay? And I take it back. It's not eating less, okay? It's eating the same amount of food. It's just eating less often, okay? So basically reducing the eating window down. And listen, there's people who are stressed, who are giant stress balls, who have blood sugar problems, that going from a 16-hour eating window down to an 8 is probably not going to be a good call, okay? But doesn't mean that you can't slowly transition someone to more of a reduced eating window. It's probably going to be a little bit smaller for men than it is for women, just because they're a little bit more sensitive. But, we have evolved on this planet through not having access to food 24 hours a day. Okay, we used to have to forage for it. We used to have to go find it. That was a stressor that made us more resilient. We don't have that anymore. Okay? We don't have any of these stressors. So that creating that metabolic flexibility and fasting is an important part of the life cycle. We have to work with our genes and not work against them. We're doing everything against what we've evolved. We sit on our butts all day. We don't exercise. We are not in the sun. We're not outside nature. There's so many factors that are at play that people are like, wow, modern conveniences. It's actually working against how our body works.
Yeah, for sure. Would you ever recommend like a lower carb approach or a keto approach for someone who might be struggling with that?
Yeah, so I don't like I think any tool in the tool belt can be used short term. Like a keto diet can work. I've even seen a carnivore diet work, which I never thought I would say that, but for people with like extreme gut problems where they just can't handle any fibers. But we were put on this earth and we've evolved to eat all foods. We need a balance, okay? And everyone's going to be different. So I'm not going to say this one plan was going to work for that person, or a balanced plan works for everyone. Everyone's a little different, but there are times where how you process food is different now than when you were 15 years old. And it'll probably be different from when you're 45 or 55. So you have to kind of work with your body in those situations. And keto, I think I put keto and being vegetarian into the same category. Can it be done right? 100%. Do most people do it right? Absolutely not. Okay, they'll eat the wrong type of fats. They'll eat all animal fats. They'll be super inflamed. They won't get enough vegetables. They'll eat too much protein. Same thing with vegetarians. Okay, they won't get enough variety. They'll eat the same 4 vegetables. They don't get color. They don't supplement with, they think eating beans is enough to get their protein. There's lots of problems in both of them. But people are educated. They can do it right and have, be vital or live with lots of vitality as well. But it's just filling those cracks, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I totally agree in terms of kind of using the tools to your advantage, and then also realizing that, something, might work at a specific time, and then maybe you need to go try something else. And these things are, like you said, just tools in the toolbox to implement at different times, and try them out and realize that, everybody's different. So totally agree with that. And you did mention gut health a little bit, so I want to dive into that. If you're okay with that,
sure.
Awesome. So maybe we can kind of just start in general, like what is the kind of overall importance of having optimal gut function? I guess that's a very broad way of saying it. When we're looking at or talking about body composition changes, or if someone is looking to lose body fat or opposite, looking to build muscle in that regard.
Yeah, so I think people don't realize how important the microbiome is. Okay, so and just give you a little fun fact is that they've connected over 90% of all metabolic functions to being controlled by our gut bacteria. Okay, so what that means is that 90% of all the functions going on have nothing to do with our own cells, our brains. So you could really make the claim that we are more functioning bacteria than we are human. And there's a connection, there's an axis that the microbiome communicates with everything. It's the gut-brain axis, the gut mitochondria axis, the gut-lung axis. It communicates with everything because let's just say that's the sensors for everything that the body's experiencing inside that it tells the rest of the body. Okay, so think about the concept of why do people, when they stop dieting or when they stop being super strict, why do they always go back to a certain weight? Maybe it's skinny or it's fat. Okay, they always seem to go back to this, that they've always been in their life. Okay, it's called the metabolic set point.
Mm-hmm.
And think of the person who is obese and he has obese parents and follows those patterns. He doesn't eat a lot of food, but he's still fat. Now think about the Kenyans or the people who live in the bush in Africa. They actually eat a good amount of food, but they're still bone skinny. Okay, they eat a lot of calories. Where does it all go? What makes the difference between those two people? Well, the bioindividuality is actually a lot of their gut microbiome. Okay, so the more, let's just say, different types of bacteria will take more fuel and utilize it to make energy producing substrates versus taking more of those calories and storing it as fat. There's two types of bacteria that make up a lot of the gut called bacteroidetes and firmicutes. And I always like to think bacteroidetes is bony. Okay, those are more like the Africans, and then firmicutes, think fat. Okay, so mm-hmm. Fat takes more of it, and that is the biggest factor that will contribute to someone having inability to lose weight is having an imbalanced microbiome or being more inflamed. So what can you do to change that? Well, you can definitely change the microbiome. It can change in about 24 hours if you do something I don't know, powerful, so to speak, or like you can kill all the bacteria in a gut with an antibiotic in less than 8 hours. But then it takes about 3 to 4 months if you're doing everything right to kind of rebuild it back up. So I think that's one thing that people don't realize. Like, why can I never lose any weight? Why can I not keep it off when I diet, when I'm miserable when I'm dieting, and then I come off, all the weight comes back? It's largely because of the diversity of their gut.
Interesting. And kind of scary.
Yeah.
So what would be like some kind of typical, symptoms of poor gut health that you've seen most often that need to be addressed?
So I think this is another problem that you just see with so many people is that if they're not constipated, if they're not, bloated, if they don't have diarrhea, they don't think it's a gut problem. But the gut is connected to everything. So skin issues, toxin removal, hormones, brain fog, like pretty much connect anything in the body, pain in the joints, low exercise tolerance, inability to lose weight, like everything is connected to the gut in one regard. So people, when they say, well, my digestion's great. Well, I guarantee I could give you a questionnaire. I could ask you some questions where it can always be improved. Okay. How many different foods do you eat per day? How many different plants and fruits and vegetables, different variety do you eat over a month period of time? I bet you're going to find a lot of people eat the same 10 to 15 foods. Okay. That's not how you build a healthy microbiome. So let's just say maybe you feel okay. Okay. Can things be better? Can you have even better levels of health? Okay. Can you be a little bit more resilient in the face of facing something like a coronavirus or anything else? Because remember, most of your immune system's in your gut as well. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a little bit more of a long-winded answer. Tactics, what you can do, like symptoms, don't just think they're all digestive related. Think, what is the number one symptom that most people complain about? Fatigue, being tired, not having enough energy. That's a big one. Brain fog, memory issues. Start there and kind of look at, can this be optimized? If not, it can only help every single other system or thing in the body.
Yeah. So where would you start? Like, I know there's probably like a whole kind of way that you go about this, but are there like the top 3 kind of tips or things that you would focus on to improve gut health?
I guess it really depends on someone's symptoms. So if someone comes and there's obviously problems, like there's digestive symptoms or there's chronic issues, then you have to start and work through a system where, removing triggers, removing inflammatory foods, supporting digestion in different means. But if someone's like, I just want to improve the health of my gut, what are three things that you can do? Well, one, don't eat all day. Okay, the gut is only, the cells turn over in the gut relatively quickly when when they're able to rest, so to speak. So when you're not digesting food, that's a big one. The second thing you do is increase your variety of plants and fruits and vegetables, or eat more plants, so to speak. I play a game with a lot of clients where I give them a sheet with about 50 different fruits and vegetables that's at the most, current grocery stores in America. And I try to have them aim for 30 a week. And, there's still grains, there's nuts and things on there, but it just makes people omnipresent and aware, like, wow, I really didn't eat a lot of plants, or I didn't get a lot of color in my diet. That's an easy one. And then you can support digestion, okay, which is things through like apple cider vinegar, bitter foods, or digestive bitters, or even digestive enzymes that might have something like hydrochloric acid in it that really helps just make sure that the foods are broken down so that the body can, get them into the bloodstream and recognize them and utilize them. I would say those are probably three of the easiest, best things that people can do if you want to optimize, the health of the gut.
Okay. Awesome. Great tips. Definitely need to go. I feel like for me, like I'm definitely a creature of habit and trying to, think about like when I plan my week and my food, I tend to always go back to probably the same 10 things just because those are the things that satisfy me and I enjoy. So yeah, it definitely takes some effort to change that. How do you personally kind of go about like your personal, daily, I guess, nutrition protocol in terms of, do you incorporate fasting? Like, how do you get all of these different, plants and vegetables and all that into your day?
It's a couple little tactics. It takes a little work and some practice, but the key is building these things into being lifestyle habits, not just doing it once a month, once a week. You have to kind of aim to make these things like brushing your teeth, like just automatic. I eat a relatively large salad every day. And I tend to make like superfood smoothies where I put a lot of different things into it. Those are two opportunities that maybe someone's not going to do both of those, but maybe they could just start with one salad that has a new green every week, two colored vegetables, some nuts and seeds, and a healthy, olive oil and apple cider vinegar type of dressing. And then each week you rotate the green, you rotate the different vegetables. Okay. Something simple as that, or like a smoothie. Okay. Same thing. You can put frozen greens into it. You can put different berries. You can put it's amazing what you can actually blend up into a smoothie that you really don't taste. I put squashes and different things in it. And sometimes I make one with nutmeg and cinnamon and carrots and squash. It's like a fall. So they can be really tasty. Another quick little tactic you can do is I call them microbiome mashups, where you just go to the store and you buy about 15, 20 plants, a lot of prebiotic type of things. You chop it up and you blend it up with like a little bit of broth or maybe like coconut milk per se. And you just put it into little jars. You put it into ice cube trays. And then each day when you have a shake, you just pop a couple of ice cubes out and you have, 15, 20 different fibers into the shake. That's all you need to essentially work on reestablishing some of the healthy gut bugs that might be lacking. So those are three easy tactics if you want to try to employ and add in more plants and variety into the diet. Because I challenge everyone to ask, how many people out there are eating 30 different plants through the week? How many of those people have health problems? How many of those people are not able to lose weight? And I say, listen, you can't do this for 3 weeks and say, oh, all my problems are going away. But find someone that's been eating 30 different plants, okay, for the past year. And I'd be willing to bet that's someone that doesn't have weight problems, that doesn't have hormonal problems, that doesn't have sleep problems. Okay. I'm not going to say there's not someone that could always, you'll have 2 people call you and say, I do that for a year. And that's the case, but that fixes a lot of problems usually.
Yeah. And would you say, like, I know we've been talking a lot about plants in terms of kind of the other side, like protein and animal foods. Is there any
Mhm.
that you um, like recommend or that you personally, have versus others?
No, I think it's important to buy good quality proteins, so to speak. And remember, most of the junk that's in proteins is in the fat.
Hmm.
So maybe you can't afford organic or grass-fed meat or anything like that. Then buy lean or buy from grocery stores or places that they do actually check it. And maybe it's not 100% organic, but you're getting good quality. Because a lot of times that organic label, okay, it's expensive. And there's a lot of organic farms out there that aren't using it, or they're using something, very small an amount of one pesticide that doesn't, that still falls into it. It's still very minimal, because the EWG, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, that list is it's suspect, and it's very skewed. So if you're using that as your only reason or only means to identify high pesticide produce, it's not your best bet.
Hmm. Good to know. um, I had another question. Oh, yeah. So, in terms of this, is probably the last question to wrap up, or second to last question. In terms of like supplements
Mhm.
with, improving gut health, is there anything that you recommend or use for yourself or your clients
Mhm.
to kind of optimize that?
Yeah. So one of the biggest benefits of having, let's just say, healthy bacteria in the gut, there's certain strains that they create what are called short chain fatty acids. Super important. They signal other cells, they signal the immune system, they rebuild the gut lining. They're like these super substances, and maybe you've heard about them before. One is called butyrate, one's called propionate, and the other one's called acetate. And they have different names, like butyric acid, propionic acid. Sorry, say that one 5 times fast. But you can buy some short chain fatty acid like supplements. Butyrate is the biggest one that has the biggest effect, and there's a mountain of scientific literature showing all the benefits. But normally, it's the previous versions they stink, they smell terrible. They're kind of like they're hard to work with for supplement companies, so they would give you a form that wasn't very bioavailable, so to speak, called sodium butyrate. And up until very recently, they've now come out with liposomal forms of it. So you can take it in an oil. Super great stuff.
Hmm.
So
So that would just
butyrate,
be, oh, sorry.
yeah, short chain fatty acid supplementation. There's different forms of it, but like a liposomal form is ideal. Um, I think, probiotics, I wouldn't say there's something that can be used intermittently throughout the year to help reestablish, but eating a better diet with more fiber variety will help, feed all the different types. I do like soil-based probiotics, though. They're called termed SBOs. They can do a lot of great things in terms of, I like to call them the bouncers of the gut. Is that what they do is they kind of go into the gut and they circle, or they surround the bad guys, and they prevent them from absorbing nutrients. So they kind of crowd out the bad guys and make room for the good guys. They can be really powerful as well, and kind of new on the block in terms of probiotics, but they've still been around for a very long time. They're used in like Europe for serious bacterial infections for prescriptions, but they're not used here very much.
Interesting. And this is, sorry, I have one quick follow up in terms of probiotics, from supplements to like food,
Mm-hmm.
kimchi and sauerkraut and things like that. Do you feel like you could get a good amount, and like, yogurt and things like that? Do you think that you could get a good amount of probiotics from that without supplementing if you are consuming those types of fermented foods on a daily basis? Because I know, I feel like a lot of people don't. But
Right.
if you do focus on that, could you get a good amount?
So remember that there's going to be different bacteria that grow on different substrates. So if you're only eating kimchi ever, then you're not getting all that variety and all those different strains. If you're on the yogurt that you buy in the store, that's junk. It's
Yeah.
junk. That's not even real. They add probiotics to it. They don't even ferment it from an actual culture. But if you guys wanted to, you can buy like kefir grains and make your own yogurt. I do it at my house. Basically, it's very simple to start, and you can add it to shakes, and that's the probably the best way to get the most natural probiotics. I make kimchi, you buy it in the store. It's like $7-8 for this little container of it. You can make 2 months worth because it never goes bad, or let's just say it takes a while to go bad, for about $5. So you can really maximize that. And remember too, there are think kefir is similar to yogurt, but it has more probiotic strains. So most yogurt will have 2 to 3. Most kefir strains have about 10 to 12 if it's true kefir. And kefir also eats all the lactose. So if anyone's ever lactose intolerant, they can usually handle kefir versus even regular yogurt. But the answer to your question is yes, that's a great way. I think foods are some of the best sources, and presuming there's not overgrowths of bacteria or chronic health issues, or if they don't need some extra, for push in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense for sure. And definitely, like you said, the yogurts in the grocery store tend to not be the greatest quality. But I feel like there are some, like just, within the last 2 years, there's more companies coming out who are actually like a lot of kefir you see all over the place, kimchi, things like that. So, the health conscious, I guess you could say, grocery stores or the, Whole Foods and things like that do have some options, but, your average, Yoplait is probably not the best option to get your probiotics from.
For sure.
Cool. All right. So I do want to end on one question, which I always usually ask at the end. So is there anything that you've personally changed your mind about in the past year, and why? And it can be anything: nutrition, not nutrition, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always someone that likes to kind of admit when they're wrong if new data comes out. And sometimes it's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. Something that I was never really a big proponent of was collagen protein. Okay, because you would hear all these like, oh, it's great for your skin and it breaks down and it goes to your nails and your joints. And that's normally not how protein breakdown works. Okay, proteins are amino acids. They all break down. You have to break them down into the most basic form so you can absorb them. But what they found is that they did radio tracing with collagen peptides, and they actually stay intact, and they actually go into the joints. They go into the skin. So I actually found the years of me ragging on collagen protein, saying like, it's overhyped and not worth the money, actually turned out to be actually false. And it turned out to be very true. And people's like anecdotal responses actually had some truth behind it.
So do you implement collagen now in your daily?
Yep. It's in my shakes.
I
use the vital, like I like to swap it between the plant-based and the animal. But remember, a lot of collagen out there, there's different types. I don't know if it's 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or A, B, and C, and D. It comes from different parts, like the sternum and like the different parts of the bones. So you really want to find one that uses all different types. I like, Vital Proteins is a solid brand that has been around for a while.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the most common ones. Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, it was great chatting with you. Do you want to tell our listeners or viewers where they can find you, social media, your website, and then any programs that you have available?
Yeah. So I teach primarily health coaches, or maybe you're someone who has thought about, maybe they geek out on some of the topics. I really like listening to stuff, but now I want to actually see how I can use it my own self. I work for a company called the Nutritional Coaching Institute, the lead instructor there. And then I teach coaches in the next level, in between like the difference between clinical care and someone that needs a little help, more help than just the nutrition side, with more advanced problems like autoimmunity and gut. And if you guys want some free content, I have a webpage, traviszipper.com, tons of questionnaires, tons of like case studies, tons of examples of like hormonal problems, how to fix it, longevity, all free content. And then I'm not real active on social media. I put out content, but if anyone has ever any questions, if they have issues that they just they come up short on, you can always reach out to me or direct message me, and I'm usually pretty good at getting back to you.
Awesome. Cool. I will definitely link all of that in the show notes. And your website, traviszipper.com, you said?
Yep. Travis Zipper, Nutritional Coaching Institute is that. And then WellFits, Wellness Fitness with a Z is the mentorship program. So love to have any new people that want to go out there and change the world.
Awesome. Love it. We'll definitely
Mhm.
link that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think, I learned a lot, and I know our listeners definitely will take a lot away from this episode. So
Awesome. Very
appreciate it.
cool. Yeah. Great time.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.